My brother knocked my girlfriend and got her pregnant. And when I told my parents, they kicked me out and gave him my fund to raise the child. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. I never thought I'd be sharing this clusterfuck of a story online, but here we are. I'm still processing everything that's happened and figured writing it out might help. Plus, some of you might get a kick out of the karma that eventually came around. Some background about me. I'm 26 now, but this nightmare started when I was 22. I grew up in this small town in Ohio where everyone's all up in everyone else's business. Like, you can't even buy condoms without your mom's friend from church finding out somehow. My parents are these hardcore Christians who basically live at First Community Fellowship. My dad works as an insurance adjuster, making around $65,000 a year, and my mom's a part-time elementary school secretary who spends the rest of her time volunteering at church or gossiping with the other church ladies. We were middle class, I guess. Nice enough house in a decent neighborhood, regular family vacations to places like Myrtle Beach, that kind of thing. Nothing fancy, but comfortable. My parents were big on traditional values, which basically meant my dad made all the important decisions, and my mom nodded along while quoting Bible verses about being submissive. They were strict with me, but weirdly lenient with my younger brother. More on that bullshit later. I busted my ass through high school. I wasn't valedictorian or anything, but I graduated with a 3.7 GPA, was captain of the wrestling team, and did all that volunteer crap colleges like to see on applications. I landed a partial scholarship to State University for mechanical engineering. Not a full ride, but enough to make it somewhat affordable if I worked part-time. I got a job at Patterson's auto shop working 25 to 30 hours a week changing oil, rotating tires, and eventually doing more complex repairs. Jim Patterson, the owner, was this gruff older dude who didn't talk much, but was fair and paid me decent money considering I was still learning. Between what I made there and summers working construction, I had managed to save about $23,000 for college by my sophomore year. Here's where I made my first big mistake. My parents convinced me to let them manage this money for me. They set up some kind of educational account that they controlled for tax purposes. I trusted them completely. Why wouldn't I? They were my parents, and they'd always talked about how important my education was. Plus, my dad was always bragging about his financial know-how and how he was teaching a Dave Ramsey course at church. I figured he knew what he was doing. Then there's my brother, Mike. This dude was always the golden child despite being a complete fuck-up. 2 years younger than me, so he was 20 when all this went down. He'd already failed out of community college twice. The first time because he wasn't being challenged enough, and the second time because the professors had it out for him. At least that's what my parents told everyone at church. Mike never held a job longer than 3 months. He worked at a grocery store until he got caught taking extra breaks. Then at a fast food place until he kept showing up late. Then at the mall selling cell phones until he got fired for flirting with customers instead of, actually selling phones. But no matter how many times he screwed up, my parents always made excuses for him. Mike's just finding his path. Mike's so creative and the traditional education system doesn't accommodate his learning style. Mike just marches to his own drummer. Mike's an entrepreneur at heart. Meanwhile, I was killing myself working and studying, and they acted like that was just the bare minimum expected of me. Classic golden child/scapegoat dynamic that I was too deep in to recognize. I met Chelsea during my sophomore year at a campus coffee shop. I was studying for a thermodynamics exam, and she sat down at my table because the place was packed. She was gorgeous. Long red hair, green eyes, curves in all the right places. The kind of girl I figured would never look twice at me. But we got talking, and she actually seemed interested. Chelsea was studying business administration and worked part-time as a waitress at this fancy steakhouse downtown. She made killer tips and always had the latest iPhone, designer bags, and those expensive-ass Lululemon leggings. I thought she was ambitious, but looking back, I should have seen the red flags. She was always talking about wanting to live in a big house in the suburbs and drive a luxury car someday. Classic gold digger signs that my dumbass was too blind to see because, well, hot redhead showing interest in engineering nerd. We started dating, and for almost 2 years, things seemed pretty good. I wasn't rolling in cash, but I always made sure to take her out somewhere nice on weekends, buy her thoughtful gifts for birthdays and our anniversary, that kind of thing. She'd come over to my crappy apartment, and we'd cook dinner. Well, I'd cook while she watched TikTok videos, and then watch Netflix. Pretty normal college relationship stuff. My buddy Derek, who worked IT at the university, tried to warn me once. He and I had been friends since freshman orientation. Smart guy, kind of awkward socially, but loyal as hell. Dude, I've seen Chelsea hanging out with different guys on campus. He told me about a year into my relationship with her. Like, hanging all over them at parties and stuff. I blew him off, and we actually got into a fight about it. I accused him of being jealous because he couldn't get a girlfriend. We didn't speak for almost a month after that. Wish I'd listened to him now. Could have saved myself a world of pain. During this time, I brought Chelsea home to meet my family pretty regularly. Sunday dinners were mandatory in my family. My mom would lose her mind if I tried to skip one. My parents seemed to like Chelsea at first. She knew exactly how to act around them. All polite and interested in my mom's church gossip and my dad's boring insurance stories. Mike, though, I should have noticed how he looked at her from the beginning, always finding excuses to sit next to her at dinner or offer to show her improvements he'd made to his room, aka the posters he'd hung up. I caught him staring at her ass a few times, but I figured that was just normal guy behavior. Didn't realize he was plotting to stab me in the back the whole time. It was a Thursday night in April when Chelsea dropped the bomb. I remember it clearly because I had just finished a 10-hour shift at the shop and had grease under my fingernails that wouldn't come out no matter how hard I scrubbed. I was exhausted and had an early class the next morning. All I wanted was to shower and crash. Chelsea was sitting on my shitty apartment couch when I got home. She was dressed nicer than usual and had this weird expression on her face. Kind of serious, but also satisfied? Like she'd just pulled off something clever. "We need to talk," she said, patting the cushion next to her. Those 4 words are never good news. I sat down, already dreading whatever was coming. "I'm pregnant," she said, not even looking upset about it. More like triumphant? I felt like someone had punched me in the gut and then kicked me while I was down. "Are you sure?" was all I could say. Stupid question, I know. She nodded and pulled out a positive pregnancy test from her purse. Then another one. I took 3 different tests. I'm about 6 weeks along. My mind was racing. We used protection. Not perfectly, I'll admit, but most of the time. The odds seemed low, but obviously not impossible. "Okay," I said slowly. "We need to figure this out. What do you want to do?" I was trying to be supportive while internally freaking the fuck out. I was only 22, halfway through my degree, working for slightly above minimum wage. How the hell was I supposed to support a kid? Chelsea started talking about how we needed to step up and be adults now. How she was thinking about dropping out of school to focus on being a mom. How we should get married soon because she didn't want to be showing in the wedding photos. She had this whole life planned out in the span of apparently a few hours. "I've already told my parents," she said. "They're not happy about the timing, but they'll support us." "You told your parents before telling me?" I asked, feeling blindsided. "I needed advice from my mom," she said. Like that explained everything. "Oh, and I think we should tell your parents this Sunday at dinner. They're going to be grandparents." She seemed way too excited for someone whose life plans were supposedly being derailed. I was still in shock, but I agreed we'd tell my parents that weekend. I figured they'd be disappointed in me. Probably give me some lecture about premarital sex and sinning, but ultimately, they'd help us figure it out. Over the next few weeks, we had these long talks about the future. Chelsea suddenly wanted to move out of her apartment and into a bigger place for the baby. Never mind that the baby was the size of a pea and wouldn't need its own room for at least a year. I started picking up even more hours at the shop, working 40-plus hour weeks on top of my classes. I was fucking exhausted, but determined to make it work somehow. Chelsea started looking at bigger apartments we couldn't afford and making Pinterest boards for the nursery. She even jokingly sent me links to engagement rings that cost more than my car. When I gently suggested we might need to be more realistic about our budget, she accused me of not being excited about the baby. "A real man would be thrilled to be a father," she said, tossing her hair. "Maybe you need to reprioritize your life." Then came the day that destroyed everything. I was at my parents' house for Sunday dinner. This mandatory family gathering they insisted on every week. Chelsea was there too, already talking to my mom about baby names and nursery themes. She'd been so eager to tell them about the pregnancy, and while they were initially a bit awkward about it, especially when my dad asked if we were getting married and when, they'd pretty quickly adjusted to the idea of becoming grandparents. Mike was being his usual dickish self, making these smug comments about how I'd have to drop out of school now and how I'd trapped myself with Chelsea. He kept offering her food and drinks, being weirdly attentive in a way that annoyed me, but didn't raise any real suspicions yet. I went to the bathroom and accidentally left my phone on the table. When I came back, Chelsea's face was white and she was staring at my screen. Everyone else at the table had gone quiet too. I picked up my phone and saw a text from Derek. "Dude, I saw Mike and Chelsea coming out of the Sunset Motel on Highway 9 last week. Thought you should know. I've got your back whatever happens. The room went dead silent. I looked at Chelsea, then at Mike, and that motherfucker had the audacity to smirk at me. What the fuck is this? I asked, my voice weirdly calm considering I felt like I was about to explode. Chelsea started crying those fake-ass tears women bust out when they're caught. It's not what you think. We were just talking about the baby and stuff. At a motel? I asked incredulously. My mom gasped. Language! We don't use that word in this house. I couldn't believe that was what she was focused on, not the fact that my brother had apparently been seeing my girlfriend behind my back. Is it true? I demanded, looking at Mike. He stretched in his chair, completely relaxed, like this was just some minor inconvenience. Yeah, it's true. We've been hooking up for a while now. So what? Then Chelsea started crying even harder. It was just one time. I was confused and upset about the pregnancy. Mike snorted. Actually, it was more like 5 or 6 times, he said with this shit-eating grin. And bro, hate to break it to you, but that baby ain't yours. I lunged across the table at him, knocking over my mom's precious centerpiece, some ceramic Jesus figurine she'd brought back from a trip to Israel. I got one good punch in before my dad pulled me off him. Mike just laughed and wiped the blood from his lip. You're just mad because she came to a real man instead of some grease monkey who can barely afford ramen, he spat. At least I know how to satisfy her. The worst part? My parents just stood there, not saying a fucking word about what Mike had done. My mom was more upset about her broken Jesus statue than the fact that her younger son had betrayed her older son in the worst possible way. Instead, my mom started going on about how violence isn't the answer, and how God works in mysterious ways. My dad just stood there with his hand on my shoulder, gripping too tight, like I was the one who needed to be restrained. When I finally calmed down enough to speak, I asked Chelsea directly, "Is the baby Mike's?" She looked down at her hands and nodded. "I'm sorry, but yeah, we did a blood test last week." Last week? They'd known for a week and no one thought to tell me? I'd been picking up extra shifts, skipping study sessions, looking at shitty 2-bedroom apartments, all for a baby that wasn't even mine. How long? I asked, my voice hollow. How long has this been going on? Chelsea and Mike exchanged glances. Since Christmas, she admitted. Christmas. That was 4 months ago. While I was buying her a necklace I could barely afford and taking her to a nice restaurant for our anniversary, she was screwing my brother, probably laughing at me behind my back the whole time. Then, Chelsea had the fucking nerve to start talking about her needs and how I was emotionally unavailable because I was always working or studying. Like that justified screwing my brother and lying about the baby. I never meant to hurt you, she said, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. But Mike understands me in a way you never did. Plus, he has real potential. He's just been held back by the system. I almost laughed. Mike had potential? The guy who couldn't even show up on time to a job at McDonald's? The guy who was still living at home at 20, playing video games all day and contributing nothing? So what now? I asked, looking between all of them. Were you just going to let me think the baby was mine forever? Have me support another man's kid? My brother's kid? We were going to tell you, Chelsea said weakly. Eventually. After I'd signed the birth certificate, I asked. After I'd dropped out of school to support you? What was the plan exactly? Mike leaned back in his chair. Look, bro, it's not that complicated. Chelsea and I are together now. She's having my baby. You're the odd man out. Maybe it's time for you to move on. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The casual cruelty of it all was astounding. My brother, my girlfriend of 2 years, my parents just standing there, not defending me, not expressing outrage at what had happened. I turned to my parents. Did you know about this? They exchanged glances. We suspected something might be happening, my dad admitted. Mike confided in us a few weeks ago. And you didn't think to tell me? I was shouting now. You let me walk around like an idiot, planning for a baby that isn't mine? We thought it was something you young people needed to work out yourselves, my mom said primly. And honestly, we were praying that things would resolve in a way that kept the baby in a stable family environment. That's when it hit me. They weren't upset about Mike's betrayal because they saw it as a solution. Mike would finally have to grow up and be responsible. He'd have to get a job, support a child. And in their eyes, that was worth sacrificing my happiness and future. The shitstorm that followed was epic. My parents sat me down the next day for a family meeting. Mike and Chelsea were there too, holding hands like they were the victims in all this. Chelsea had spent the night at our family home, apparently. In my old room, most likely. The thought made me sick. Son, my dad started, his pastor voice on full blast. We've been praying about this situation, and we believe God has a plan here. A plan? I repeated. What kind of plan involves my brother fucking my girlfriend? My mom gasped like I'd just taken a dump on her Bible. Language? The Lord is testing all of us right now. Then came the kicker. They started talking about how Mike and Chelsea were going to need support with the baby, how they were young and in love, and deserved a chance to start their family right. We think it's best if they move into your old room, my dad said. It's bigger and would make a nice nursery. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My room? I don't even live here anymore, but you're giving away my space? But you still have things stored here, my mom pointed out. Like that justified everything. All those boxes in the closet, your old trophies. And we've been thinking, my dad continued, clearing his throat. The money in your college fund would really help them get started. Mike jumped in then, his voice dripping with fake concern. Look, bro, I know this is hard, but you're almost done with school anyway. And you're always bragging about how much you make at that shop. Chelsea and I need that money more than you do right now. Chelsea nodded eagerly. We were thinking we could use it for a down payment on a house. Something with at least 3 bedrooms and a yard for the baby. Nothing fancy, just something in the Oak Ridge subdivision. Oak Ridge was the most expensive neighborhood in town. My blood was boiling. That's my money. I worked for it. My dad's face hardened. Actually, the account is in our names. Legally, it's our decision how it's used. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. They were really going to take my $23,000. Money I'd sweated and bled for? Money that was supposed to help me finish my degree? And give it to Mike and Chelsea? For their baby? A baby that existed because they'd betrayed me? This is insane, I said, standing up. You can't seriously expect me to be okay with this. No one's asking you to be okay with it, my dad said coldly. We're telling you what's going to happen. And what about me? I asked. What about my future? My degree? My mom patted my hand condescendingly. You're so smart and resourceful. You'll figure something out. Mike and Chelsea, they need more help right now. And maybe this is God's way of teaching you humility, my dad added. You've always been so prideful about your achievements. I lost it then. I told them exactly what I thought of their divine plan and their precious Mike. I told Chelsea she was a gold-digging whore who would regret hooking up with a loser like my brother. I told Mike he was a pathetic excuse for a man who couldn't earn anything on his own merit, so he had to steal from me. My girlfriend, my money, my future. My dad stood up so fast his chair fell over. That's enough! Until you can accept God's will and apologize to your brother and Chelsea, you're not welcome in this house. Fine by me, I spat. Keep the money, keep the room, keep the happy fucking family. I'm out. As I was leaving, I heard Mike say, he'll cool off and come crawling back. He always does. I swore right then that I would never give them the satisfaction. When I got back to my apartment, I realized I didn't even have any photos from home. Nothing to remind me of my childhood or my family. They were all still at my parents' house, in albums and frames and boxes, along with my wrestling trophies, my Eagle Scout medal, and all the other mementos of my life before college. I texted my mom asking if I could at least come get my personal stuff. She replied that I was welcome to, as soon as I apologized to Mike and Chelsea. That's when I knew it was really over. I was on my own now. The next few months were rough as hell. My lease was ending in 2 weeks, and I had been counting on that college fund to help with the security deposit on a new place. Now I was broke, betrayed, and about to be homeless. I couch surfed at friends' places until I wore out my welcome. Everyone was sympathetic at first, but after a few weeks of me sleeping on their couch and being a miserable bastard, the invitations dried up. I picked up even more hours at the shop but had to drop 2 classes because I couldn't keep up. My grades tanked. I was basically surviving on energy drinks and dollar menu burgers. Derek was the only one who really had my back. He let me crash at his apartment for almost 6 weeks until I could save up for a security deposit on a shithole studio apartment. The place had roaches and a shower that only ran cold, but it was mine. You need to file for that money, man, Derek kept telling me. That's wage theft what they did. You worked for that cash. But lawyers cost money I didn't have, and honestly, I just wanted to cut all ties with my so-called family. The thought of dragging this out in court, having to see them again, having to relive the betrayal, I couldn't handle it. Through mutual friends, I heard that Mike and Chelsea had moved into my old room, that they were using my college fund to buy baby furniture from Pottery Barn, and that Chelsea had a push present wish list that included a $5,000 bracelet. Meanwhile, Mike still couldn't hold down a job. He'd started some bullshit entrepreneurship venture, selling overpriced protein supplements on Instagram. He called himself a fitness influencer despite having never set foot in a gym. I stalked their social media more than I'd like to admit. Chelsea was constantly posting bump photos with captions like, "So blessed," and "My amazing baby daddy spoiling me again." Each post was like a fresh knife to the gut, but I couldn't stop looking. I hit rock bottom around month 4 when my car broke down, and I couldn't afford to fix it. I had to walk 3 miles to work every day, rain or shine. One night, after a particularly shitty shift, I sat on my mattress on the floor, I couldn't afford a bed frame, and just broke down. I was exhausted, broke, and felt completely betrayed by everyone I'd ever trusted. But something clicked that night. I realized I wasn't going to let those assholes win. I wasn't going to be the pathetic ex-boyfriend brother who never recovered. I'd worked too hard, come too far to let them destroy me. The next day, I talked to my boss, Jim, about my situation. Jim was a gruff old dude who'd been running the shop for 30 years and didn't take shit from anyone. He'd seen me coming in looking progressively worse over the past few months, but hadn't said anything. "Kid, you're one of the best mechanics I've seen," he told me after I explained what had happened. "Tell you what, I need someone to manage the shop on weekends. Position comes with a $3 per hour raise, and you can work on your own car after hours." It wasn't a fortune, but it was a start. I buckled down, fixed my car, and forced myself to focus on school again. I connected with a professor who helped me get a research assistant position that paid decent money and looked good on my resume. Between the two jobs, I was working almost 60 hours a week on top of classes, but I was surviving. I cut all social media connections to my family and Chelsea. I changed my phone number. I moved to a slightly better apartment where the showers sometimes ran hot. I ate a lot of ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. I didn't date. I didn't party. I just worked and studied and slept when I could. It was a miserable existence, but it was forward motion. And every day that passed, every paycheck I earned, every test I aced, they were all little victories in my personal war against giving up. The hardest part was the loneliness. I'd lost not just my girlfriend, but my entire family in one fell swoop. Holidays were the worst. That first Thanksgiving, I worked a double shift at the shop and then went home and ate a microwave turkey dinner alone. Christmas was even worse. I volunteered to work so other employees could be with their families, then went home to my empty apartment and cried like a baby. But I kept pushing forward, one foot in front of the other, one day at a time. Fast forward 2 years. I graduated with my engineering degree. Barely, but I made it. Jim connected me with his brother-in-law, who ran a manufacturing company that built custom parts for luxury vehicles. I landed an entry-level engineering job there, making $68,000, more than my dad ever made. I moved into a decent apartment, bought a used but reliable car, and started paying off my student loans. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I even started dating again. Nothing serious, just casual stuff. I wasn't about to trust anyone with my heart after what Chelsea did. Then I met Zoe at a work event. She was an environmental lawyer who consulted for our company on compliance issues. Smart, independent, paid her own way, and didn't take shit from anyone. Basically the anti-Chelsea. We hit it off, and for the first time, I started to think maybe not all women were gold-digging opportunists. Zoe was 27, self-made, with her own condo and a rescue pit bull named Rudy. On our third date, I told her everything that had happened with my family. I half expected her to run for the hills. Who wants to date a guy with that kind of baggage? Instead, she listened, really listened, and then she said something that stuck with me. They didn't deserve you. And the fact that you survived what they did and still managed to build a life for yourself, that shows incredible strength. For the first time since everything went down, I felt seen. Not as a victim or a sucker or a guy with a sob story, but as someone who had faced adversity and come out the other side. Around this time, I started hearing rumblings from my hometown through Derek, who still kept in touch with people there. Apparently, my parents' church had a major scandal. The head pastor had been embezzling funds for years. My dad, who was on the financial committee, was under investigation too. They hadn't been charged with anything, but their reputation was in tatters. Mike's supplement business had failed spectacularly. Turns out he was making health claims that caught the FDA's attention. Something about his products curing depression and boosting testosterone by 500%. He got hit with a $15,000 fine he couldn't pay. Chelsea had popped out the kid, a boy they named Jaden, of course they picked that name, but she was constantly posting passive-aggressive stuff on social media about how some fathers don't step up and single mom life is so hard. I didn't give a shit about any of it. I was focused on my own life, getting promoted, and building something real with Zoe. She moved in with me after 8 months, bringing Rudy and her enormous book collection. We talked about buying a house together. Then the first call came. It was a Tuesday evening. Zoe and I were making dinner together. Well, I was cooking, and she was sitting on the counter drinking sparkling water and telling me about her day. My phone rang with a number I hadn't seen in over 2 years. My mother. I showed Zoe the screen. It's my mom. She raised her eyebrows. Are you going to answer it? I almost didn't, but part of me was curious, and another part wanted her to know that I was doing just fine without them. I think I will. I'll give you some privacy, Zoe said, grabbing Rudy's leash for a walk. But I shook my head. Stay, please. I want you to hear this. I put the phone on speaker. Hello? Oh, sweetie, my mom sobbed. We've been trying to reach you. They're really bad. Long story short, my dad had been charged as an accessory in the church embezzlement scheme. Turns out he'd been looking the other way while the pastor siphoned money from the building fund. He'd lost his job, and they were drowning in legal fees. The house was in foreclosure. My mom had been diagnosed with high blood pressure from the stress. We need help, she admitted. Just temporary. Just until we get back on our feet. I told her I'd think about it and hung up. Zoe looked at me, concerned. Are you okay? I was surprised to realize that I was. The call hadn't sent me spiraling like I'd feared. I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction at their misfortune, no desire to help. Just nothing. I'm fine, I said. Let's finish dinner. The next day, Mike called. Bro, he started, like we were still cool. I know things got messed up between us, but I need a favor. Chelsea left me, man. Took Jaden with her. She's suing for child support, but I don't have a job right now. I'm staying with mom and dad, but they can't even help themselves. I let him ramble for 5 minutes about how hard his life was now. How Chelsea had changed after the baby and became a total feminazi who expected him to actually parent and shit. How she'd cleaned out their joint account, funded by my college money, before leaving. So anyway, he finally concluded, I thought maybe you could loan me like $10,000 to get back on my feet, or maybe let me come stay with you for a while. I heard you've got a sweet job now. I'll think about it, I said and hung up. Zoe looked at me over her morning coffee. Let me guess. Brother wants a bailout? I nodded. How'd you know? Because that's what users do, she said simply. They use people until they can't anymore. Then they find a new source. The third call came from Chelsea herself. Hey, she said, trying to sound sweet. So, I don't know if you heard, but Mike and I didn't work out. He was so immature, you know? Not like you. You were always so responsible. I've been thinking about you a lot lately. I cut her off. What do you want, Chelsea? She sighed. Look, I'm struggling. Single mom, no help from Mike or his parents. I had to move back in with my mom, and she's charging me rent I can't afford. Jaden needs new clothes, and daycare is so expensive. And, I prompted, and I thought maybe, given your history with me, you might want to help out? For old times' sake? I couldn't believe the audacity. Let me get this straight. You want me to financially support the kid you had with my brother after you cheated on me? When you put it that way, it sounds bad, she whined. But Jaden is your nephew. Don't you care about family? That was rich coming from her. I'll think about it, I said, and hung up for the third time. I didn't have to think about shit. I already knew exactly what I was going to do. A week later, I rented out a conference room at the only nice hotel in my hometown. I had my lawyer, Sarah, draw up some paperwork. Then I sent formal invitations to my parents, Mike and Chelsea, telling them I wanted to discuss financial arrangements to help the family during this difficult time. Zoe thought I was crazy. You don't owe them anything, she kept saying. They're vultures. I know, I assured her. Just trust me. They all showed up looking desperate but hopeful. My mom had lost weight, her clothes hanging off her frame. My dad looked 10 years older, his hair now completely gray. Mike was sporting a scraggly attempt at a beard, probably to hide his double chin from all the weight he'd gained. And Chelsea? She was still attractive in that obvious way, but the strain of single motherhood showed in the dark circles under her eyes. Mike had the nerve to try to hug me. I stepped back. Let's get down to business, I said, opening my laptop. I've been reviewing your situations, and I'm prepared to help on certain conditions. Their faces lit up. My dad started going on about how he knew I'd do the right thing, and how blood is thicker than water. I nodded to Sarah, who handed out the documents. These are legally binding contracts. I'm willing to provide financial support under the following terms. I pulled up a PowerPoint presentation I'd prepared. Zoe had helped me make it look professional as hell. First, I'll pay off the remaining mortgage on the house, approximately $112,000, so you won't be foreclosed on, I told my parents. Their eyes widened. In exchange, you'll sign the house over to me. You can continue living there, paying me rent at 20% below market rate. My dad's mouth opened and closed like a fish. But that's our home. Was your home? I corrected. Before you decided to steal my college fund and kick me out, I turned to Mike. For you, I'm offering to cover your legal fees and set up a payment plan for your FDA fines. In exchange, you'll work as a janitor at my company's facility. The job pays $14 an hour with no benefits. You'll also sign this document acknowledging that you deliberately pursued a relationship with Chelsea to hurt me. Mike turned red. That's bullshit. I'm not signing that. Then you can figure out your own mess, I shrugged. Finally, I turned to Chelsea. For Jaden, not for you. I'll set up a trust fund of $20,000 for his education. The money goes directly to the school when he's 18, and only if he maintains a 3.0 GPA. You get nothing. Chelsea burst into tears. But what about me? How am I supposed to live? Get a job, I suggested. Or find another sucker to leech off of. My mom was sobbing now. This isn't Christian forgiveness. This isn't what family does. I laughed. You forfeited the right to talk to me about family when you chose Mike over me, when you stole my money and gave it to them, when you kicked me out and left me with nothing. But we're desperate, my dad pleaded. We'll lose everything. Like I lost everything? I countered. These are my terms. Take them or leave them. You have 24 hours to decide. I stood up and buttoned my suit jacket. Sarah collected the unsigned contracts. Wait, Mike called as I reached the door. What if we don't sign? What will you do? I turned back with a smile. Nothing. I'll go back to my successful career and happy relationship and continue living my best life. You'll continue spiraling into poverty and desperation. Either way, I win. I walked out feeling lighter than I had in years. Zoe was waiting for me in the hotel bar. How'd it go? She asked. Exactly as expected, I replied, loosening my tie. They looked like they were about to have collective heart attacks. Think they'll sign? I shrugged. Doesn't matter to me. The sweet revenge was seeing their faces when they realized I didn't need them. They needed me, and that I had the power to help them. Or not. 2 days later, Sarah called to tell me my parents had signed the house over to me. Mike had initially refused the janitor job, but changed his mind when he was served with court papers for the unpaid FDA fines. Chelsea tried to contest the terms of Jaden's trust fund, arguing that she needed money now, not years in the future. But my lawyer shut that down fast. I've never visited the house since they signed it over. I have a property management company collect the rent. Mike lasted exactly 3 weeks at the janitor job before getting fired for sleeping in a supply closet during his shift. Chelsea tried calling me twice more to beg for money, then gave up. Last I heard, Mike moved in with some other girl he met online, probably his next victim. Chelsea's working double shifts at a diner and complaining on social media about how hard her life is. My parents are still in the house, my house now, living on my dad's much-reduced retirement after the legal fees ate most of their savings. Sometimes people ask if I feel bad about what I did. The answer is no. I don't feel bad, and I don't feel particularly good either. I just feel free. Free from the weight of their expectations, their manipulation, their betrayal. I married Zoe last spring in a small ceremony. Derek was my best man. Jim walked Zoe down the aisle since her parents are no longer in the picture. We bought a house in a different state and are thinking about starting a family soon. I don't know if what I did counts as forgiveness, but watching them grovel for the same mercy they never showed me, that felt like fucking justice. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about rising so far above your enemies that they have to strain their necks just to see how far they'd have to climb to reach you. And me? I'm still climbing higher every day.